the public are provided with the following methods to watch and or participate in this open meeting. Attend in person at the North Dumfries Community Complex. Attend electronically via Zoom to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. You can watch the meeting live streamed on the Township YouTube page, and you can submit written comments to the Clerk's Division. Comments are provided to council members and form part of the public record. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, and can I have approval of the agenda, please, Council Orland.
For myself, so by Council Wilms, that council adopted March 11, 2024 council agenda as presented with the following addendum. Add to item 7.14, sponsored the P report 0820.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. I would now like to do the Indigenous acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. And today, the Indigenous representative from the Region of Waterloo set up a welcoming sign listing about 6 to 8 different Indigenous welcomes. It's interesting, they just don't say hello, they say all are included and welcome here, a similar type of words. They're very inclusive, which is something we should all be reflecting on, because our society today seems to want to be isolated and separated, and I think that's wrong. I think we should respect each other's differences, but include it all. So let's just underline that. Thank you. Is there any disclosure between the interest of John and Jabila? Seeing none. I'd like the motion to adjourn from council to committee of all, please.
Moved by myself, second by Council Kelly, that council adjourned to sit as committee of the whole.
All those in favor? Yeah, thank you. First item is 6.1 financial report regarding community grants. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
The committee of the whole recommend the following items be approved as presented and outlined in the staff reports listed in the finance function area. That the report number 04-2024 be received, and that council authorize the treasurer director of corporate services to grant allocations for 2024 which totaled for 34,860 to the listed groups and organizations as recommended by the community grant working group as follows: Porchlight, $4,000, Air Pride, $265, Junior Achievers SWO, 2,000, Lang's Family Health Team, 4,500, Air Dumfries Pipe Man, 4,000, Porch Fest, 800, Here to Their Market, 3,015, Air Community Theater Group, 11,300, Kiwanis, 3,035, North Dumfries Lion Club, 135, and North Dumfries School Fair Committee, 1,810. And that the grant allocation for the Junior Achievers SWO is contingent upon the delivery of a program at both Cedar Creek Public School and at St. Bridget Catholic Elementary School. And that the grant allocation for the North Dumfries School Fair Committee be protected to an amount of $1,810 and released by the treasurer if the annual fair is hosted in 2024 in McNeil Hall.
All those in favor? Gary, thank you. Next is developmental services function area discussion paper on bill 162. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
that the committee of the whole recommend the following items be approved as presented and outlined in the staff reports listed in development services function area. 7.1, that PD report number 08/2024 be received, and that province be requested to adjust the deployment area boundary in the Highway 401, Regional Road 97 business area as conceptually noted in attached number 5 to this report, and specifically to include property parcel A-4.1, 13.1 hectares in area within the expanded employment area boundary, and that staff be directed to submit PD report number 08/2024 along with the resolution for submission on the Environmental Registry of Ontario and to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as the township's response to Schedule 3 of Bill 162 being changes to the Official Plan Adjustments Act 2023, and that a copy of PD report number 08/2024 along with this resolution be forwarded through to Brian Riddell and BPP Gators.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. There's nothing in the community services and under governments and protected services function area. Is anyone bringing reports forward or? See, no, go ahead, Ms. Rose.
I think we wanted to discuss number 2, the structure procedures review.
Correct. Correct, so, any questions on 901 and 913? If not, then let's pass 901 and 1. Oh, Councilor Austin.
9.2 is the council structure, right?
Right. So we're gonna pass 9.1 and 9.3?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said 9.2.
Yes. Okay, Carl, can I have the motion for 9.3, please, Councilwoman?
Moved by myself by Council Wilms that the committee of the whole recommend the following items be approved as presented and outlined in staff reports listed in the government's protected services function area 9.1, CLK 06/2024, the 2023 annual accessibility staff report. That report CLK 06/2024 be received and the council adopt the 2023 annual accessibility status report. And 9.3, FD report 03/2024, February 2024 monthly fire incident summary. That FD report 03/2024 be received with the first information.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. I do not have a second motion for 9.2. Let me just check this. No, I do not. Okay, all right. So, does anybody want to kick this off, or we're just gonna ask in general terms, CO,
Madam Mayor, if it would assist council, I can provide a very high-level summary, and perhaps from that, I might answer some questions that council might have. The acting clerk, Kyle Kruger, unfortunately is not able to be with us this evening, under the weather. In his stead, I will try and provide an overview of the report and the key aspects around this. Council may remember back in January of 2023, with the new term of council, we talked about governance, and there was a staff report at that time that outlined a series of possibilities in terms of how council may govern itself, both in the form of sitting as council, but also things like advisory committees and task force and working groups and the like. Council at the time, as it relates specifically to convening of council meetings, because we had 2 new members of council, but the question was, well, let's try the current program, which had been in place through the previous term, and in a year's time, we had a little bit more experience in dealing with the agenda, and we could revisit at that point in time. So this report flows out of that content and direction from January 2023. So a year later, staff, with the fresh eyes of the acting clerk, his experience in dealing with other municipalities during his career, has brought forward a report for council's consideration. It is not a fundamental rewrite of the procedures bylaw. It's more targeted at some key messages for council's consideration. One would be a uniform start time for all meetings of council. And right now, some of our meetings start at 6 o'clock. Committee of the whole example. But our regular council and our council planning meetings start at 7 o'clock. So the intent would be to have one standardized start time, and what is suggested for council's consideration is a uniform 6 p.m. start time. This would be helpful in the context of those 4 months when we have only one meeting a month, and we have what's called combined council, when we're dealing with both the regular business of council, but we're also sitting either as committee of adjustment and or we're dealing with statutory public meetings convened under the Planning Act, dealing with things like zone applications or plan to subdivision. Our past practice has been to start our business at 6 p.m. We have already gone out to the community 3 weeks or a month in advance and said that the council planning applications would be dealt with at 7 o'clock. So we've gone partway through an agenda, and in some cases, we've actually dealt with the agenda, and we're just waiting to start the 7 p.m. public meetings. Or we stop partway through our agenda, adjourn to go into council planning, deal with whatever those business items, and then we'll return to deal with the balance of the council meeting. If we have a uniform 6 p.m. start time, regardless of what meeting we're in, we would actually advertise our planning application meetings to start at 6 o'clock. So you can start your meeting by opening it up, declaring pecuniary matters of pecuniary interest, you do the Indigenous recognition, and then we would go directly into those planning applications, whether it be committee of adjustment or council. Once we deal with those things, then we would continue with the balance of the council agenda in terms of other staff reports, correspondence, delegations, and presentations. So there is some improvements in terms of sequencing of tasks if we have a uniform start time. The other aspect is just looking at how we convene our meetings. So today is committee of the whole. Technically, you are just dealing with staff reports in 4 thematic areas. It's a consent agenda. So if you don't pull the report, then it's deemed to be adopted as presented. Those are recommendations from committee to council. So 2 weeks later, as recommendations from committee, regular council is ratifying the earlier recommendations coming out of the earlier meeting. What we are suggesting is that we abandon committee of the whole council and we just sit as regular council or council on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. You're not adding more meetings in a calendar season, but what you are doing is you're combining the 2 entities into one setting times 2. So you will still have a consent agenda. And so those reports that typically are going to say are more administrative or routine in nature would form part of the consent agenda. Reports that have or warrant perhaps a more in-depth discussion would be identified as items for discussion. Okay. Now, if a member of council or a member of the public wishes to speak to one of those consent items that are shown on the agenda top sheet, that report will be pulled and dropped down to the items for discussion. So just having the consent agenda doesn't preclude the ability for a member of the public or a member of council to speak to it, asking clarification, wanting perhaps further follow-up, or having some pointed questions. It just tries to tier or segregate business activities, but at no point in time does it preclude the ability to have a more extensive discussion. The items for discussion generally are the more complicated reports or reports that have typically larger impact, whether it be on the budget or the procedures or a land use type of activity. If I just look at some general themes. And once again, council doesn't have to pull those reports if they adopt the recommendations. However, we want to have that pause and signal in the agenda top sheet. Council, these are a little bit more complex and really should have some level of discussion. The other aspect is you will now deal with correspondence at each meeting. Typically, correspondence that's not aligned with one of the reports on the agenda is only dealt with once a month. And so now correspondence on broader issues that are submitted to the municipality that aren't related to a specific agenda item would now appear on each council schedule or council agenda. You have the ability to entertain delegations and presentations from third parties or members of the public on aspects unrelated to an agenda at both meetings, if you follow this process. So you're actually opening up, for lack of a better term, more opportunity for members of the council to have direct communication and dialogue with members of council, either through presentations or delegations. The trigger of what is a delegation or a presentation is not altered by what's in front of the township council's drafts to the procedure bylaw. The other general component is the public planning. So public planning council has two focuses, and this is unique to North Dumfries because council has chosen in the past and for 2024 to be the committee of adjustment. Technically, when you sit as committee of adjustment, you're not sitting as council. And there are very unique authorities conveyed to the committee of adjustment related to sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act related to minor variances and consents, respectively. And that's empowered two committees of adjustment. So when we have council planning, we do need to move out of council by resolution and move into the committee of adjustment because you are effectively signaling you're moving out of your role as council and you're migrating to the role of the committee of adjustment. And there you will be dealing with whatever the agenda item specific to the committee of adjustment. So it could be ratification of earlier committee of adjustment meeting minutes. It could be new reports that are public meetings where you're soliciting comments from government agencies and members of the public on the merits of, say, a minor variance application. Or it's a return report that's already been before council in an earlier meeting, dealing with a minor variance or a consent application. You would deal with those just as you have historically. And when you render a decision, you have your decision pages that you would execute as members of the committee of adjustment. You would then adjourn committee of adjustment and you would return to council. And there now may be public meetings convened under the Planning Act dealing with matters such as official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, plans of subdivisions, or condominium. Because those are aspects that are within the purview of council as set out in the Planning Act. And you would be holding your public meetings as convened under the Planning Act, dealing with those types of applications. So the meeting doesn't change. We try to clean up the language, for lack of a better term, to provide more consistency in terms of how you move from council to committee adjustment back to council. But the overall premise and meeting frequency doesn't change. Now, that meeting on the fourth Tuesday, is it required? And that's always been the case because we don't know on any given month if there are applications that requires public meetings. And so it's always been on a required basis. Okay? That aspect doesn't change. What does change is the 6 months start, because currently that meeting typically starts at 7:50. We've also provided some language to clean up matters as it relates to how we're dealing with bylaws, how we're dealing with electronic participation at meetings, adjournments, and how we trigger speakers. But it doesn't change the intent of what your historic practice is. It's just providing a little bit more clarity if someone was to read the bylaw and looking at sequencing or language. So that at a high level are the fundamentals which are being presented to Township Council for your consideration. The changes are partly attributed to comments that individual members of council have made over the past year. Mr. Kruger's observations of now watching 5 or 6 meetings and how council themselves has conducted themselves. And sometimes confusion, where are we on the agenda, which motion am I dealing with? You will actually have less motions to move in and out of certain functional areas as part of the agenda if you adopt what's being presented. So, Madam Mayor, that's a Coles Notes view at 30,000 feet of what the report intends. We have presented for you comparative table showing you the meeting schedule, that which is the in effect schedule, and that what will be proposed if you were to adopt changes as recommended by Mr. Kruger, the acting clerk, effective April through the calendar year. You will see there are no new meetings. You will see that you still have the same grouping of meetings. The term has changed. The start time has changed for the 4th Tuesday and the 4th Monday of the month being now a 6 p.m. start time. So, Madam Mayor, your convenience, I'm available to answer questions that council.
Thank you. So, councilors, questions, comments? Councilor Tilly and Councilor Rose.
Thank you for the clear schedule. It does clarify that for some of my question's been answered that I said.
Councilor Rose.
So two items. So sometimes in the agenda, we kind of do like closed session first, and then we're going to go over the nice agenda. I was just wondering how the new approach would help alleviate some of that confusion. Where am I in the agenda when we're not exactly following things line by line?
So, Madam Mayor, through Councilor Williams, we do for the most part try and have council in camera closed session at the end of the evening, where it is a report brought forward by staff and staff speaking to the report. Where we have done a 6 o'clock start time or special start time to deal with that council in closed session is when we've had an outside speaker. It's typically been township legal counsel, and we've done that so that they're not sitting through a meeting that we don't know how long would occur, and it's more efficient use of their time, to be honest, billing rate. So we have historically done 6 o'clock, and we come to council and ask for a special start time for 6 o'clock if it's been a 7 o'clock meeting agenda time. So what would happen is, working on the premise we don't have a public meeting, okay, under committee of adjustment or planning act, we could, after the Indigenous acknowledgement and the disclosures of pecuniary interest, council by motion would move the in-camera up to follow right after the declaration of pecuniary interest in Indigenous recognition, and have room then adjourned. In this case, legal counsel would go through whatever their reporting to township council is. You would deal with whatever that item is in closed session. You would adjourn, and then you would continue with the balance of your agenda as presented. If it's a staff in-camera item, we would just follow the agenda to be one of the last items on the agenda top sheet. If you had a public meeting, remember, we're out advertising 3 weeks a month in advance of that start time. You would deal with the public meetings, and then you would adjourn to a council to deal with the balance. We typically don't have that many sessions in the period of calendar meetings where we have typically an in-camera with legal counsel that requires a meeting start time, but it does occur. And as I said, we tried to in the past schedule those opportunities for legal counsel to attend early in the evening for obvious reasons.
Any other questions?
I really like the idea of a consistent start time. I'm not sure about 6, but I'd like to hear other council response about 6 versus 7. Like 6 is nice because we won't be able to get things done earlier and go home earlier, but it keeps the things we
Councillor Austin.
Just to follow up on Councilor Holmes' first question, I'm wondering if you're referring to, and I've referred to it a couple times. For example, if we have, let's say, committee of adjustment. So we'll go through the territorial knowledge, we'll go through the reflection, we'll go through the community area interest, then we'll sit as, we'll adjourn the council, go into committee of adjustment. Then, excuse me, then the item drops right down to like 8. And we start at 8, and then when we adjourn from committee of adjustment, then we go back up to item number 4. We talked about that several times because, and excuse me, I've used the example of it's confusing. Like, I don't understand why you can't go into committee of adjustment, and then the next item are the items committee of adjustment, and then we adjourn, and then back into council. I don't know why we have to jump down and then finish that, and then jump back up, and then go from there. That's response to your first question, because it's confusing and for us, I think, and the public, anybody that is watching, I am sure is going, I have no idea where they are. Okay. And the answer to your second question, I don't mind 6 o'clock start either. It puts a little bit more pressure on me to get home, but that's fine. It just means I eat like a German Shepherd and run out the door. You know, so we're good with the earlier meeting if we get done.
CEO McMillan.
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Austin. So where we have multiple sections and agendas, where's those combined council meetings, when we only have one meeting in the month, so think of July and August, December, or January, they're all triggered by the holidays. So obviously July, August, it's the holiday break that we provide over a 2 or 3 week period, and that straddles July, August. The other is obviously December, as we look at the back end of the month, dominated by the holiday season and staff holidays associated with it. And then January, it's partly because the office historically been closed between Christmas and New Year's, so it's not being able to publish the agenda leading into early January. But it's also, we typically have our budget meetings. We usually have 2 in the middle of the month of January. So it's also a relatively heavy month for council because generally we have 4 meetings, but 3 of them are budget and 1 kind of regular meeting. So when we've had the combined meeting, you're quite correct, we bounce back and forth depending on the topical area. And largely it's because we started at 6 o'clock, but we have the advertised committee adjustment or the public meetings under the Planning Act advertised for 7 o'clock. If we follow the format as recommended by the acting clerk, all your meetings will start at 6. And after you did your, I'll call your salutations, you'd be going directly into those public meetings, whether the committee adjustment or council, you would deal with them. And then you would continue on with the balance of your agenda as published. So you wouldn't be starting at 1 and going to 7 and back to 5 and whatever. You would be following that sequencing. With of equal importance are notifications to the public that would have gone out 3 weeks a month earlier for those adjustment or Planning Act files would be noticed. That's specific to those 4 combined meetings that we have in a calendar year. On your typical Tuesday night or Tuesday of the month, it's only planning matters. So it's, once again, acknowledgement, disclosure of pecuniary interest. You would go directly into committee of adjustment, deal with whatever's in front of the committee of adjustment, adjourn committee of adjustment, and if there is Planning Act public meetings that require the attention of council, then you would deal with those applications, and then you would adjourn for the night.
My only hesitation with this is, I like the committee of the whole process because it allows council to sort of flow through trial balloons, get the public thinking about what we're talking about. And then the council meeting at the end of the month, the public comes to us and says, hey, I didn't like what you guys talked about 2 weeks ago. And we as a council have kind of reflected on that, we have public input, people stop us at the food land or Tim Hortons and complain to us about what we talked about committee of the whole. And then we make a motion, then we make our motion on the end of the month. With this new procedure, what happens, we make the actual decisions at every meeting. So then we get a situation where if we pass something, let's say tonight, for example, the next meeting, 2 weeks from now, we have to either rescind that motion or make a new motion if there's a lot of public outcry. So the only thing with the committee of the whole that I liked is that giving the public a chance to realize we're talking about something important. Quite often they miss our agenda. So they look at this, they think, oh, there's something happening that we should actually be involved in. And the second meeting in the month, they come in droves and complain about our decision or, favor our decisions. Either way, getting public input. So I'm just concerned about that part.
Okay, Councillor Austin.
That's a very valid point, if that's how it goes, like, I'm understanding that committee of the whole will be together with council, but the topic will be brought up, let's say this Monday, but then it'll come to council at following meeting, are you suggesting that this new format, committee of the whole, let's say if everything goes through, fine, we're putting that through at 6:15 and at 6:45, we're saying it's done, it's a done deal.
So, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Groveman and Oster, if you were to adopt the draft that's in front of you tonight, it's recommended by staff, you would no longer have committee of the whole. You would be sitting as council, and council adopts something, or adopts it in mass, if we're looking at the consent agenda, then it's not only open for discussion, including by members of the public, council, but if it's dealt with that evening by council, it is ratified. Today's process, generally speaking, there is a 2-week pause. So you're sitting tonight as committee of the whole. You will be presenting reports, you can speak to those reports. Typically in a committee of adjustment, there's a pause because you're making a recommendation. And regular council, which typically sits on the 4th Monday of the month, ratifies any recommendations coming out of your committee of the whole. So today there's, in most meetings, there's a 2-week pause and allows council to revisit an earlier recommendation coming out of committee. And council, sitting as regular council, that in that 2-week span later, can either adopt as presented and open it up for further discussion, which could include deferral or return back to staff for further information. Or it could be a new position taken by council based on whatever might have been garnered in that 2-week pause period between meetings. As Councillor Rowland has indicated, you would not have that luxury if this report is adopted as presented.
Councillor Austin.
So the clerk, the clerk, Schroeder, after, being with us in council for so long, has observed how we function, and he's suggesting that it be altered to this format. So I'm assuming that he's looking at many councils work with this format.
If I may, the region does committee of the whole. And Councillor Austin, I probably would have leaned towards the change, except that I can remember 2 occasions when, after committee of the whole, you came back and said, I had these comments and these comments. We changed the motion in that 2-week period. Whereas if we passed it, then a movement and a second has to bring it back again, put it back on the floor, has to be 2/3 majority vote to get the motion back open and further discussion. So it's a lot more rigmarole, but it still can be done if we catch it. I don't know. I mean, I can't remember the 2 that you caught You caught two of them and changed them in the second meeting before we actually passed it. Council Tilly,
That was actually gonna be my question, where we go to council was the term, how would we come back and made a decision to change something? And then as Dr. Roman pointed out, this is something that protects us from additional paperwork, but I guess the big question is, if there's a couple occasions where we have to go back, does removing the additional time and effort to include the community as a whole and just make it council, does it warrant just changing it if that's what a lot of other places look?
Ms. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the other points that I just want to bring to council's attention with this is it speeds up some business of the township as well by going to the council meetings every week. For example, we are supposed to bring staff reports to the committee of the whole meeting. We're supposed to be debated, and then it's at the council meeting where they're ratified. If we have a tender close between now and the end of the month, we have to wait till the April meeting to bring that motion forward. And then it waits to the end of April to actually be able to be awarded. That's adding a month delay to some things that are routine nature. Now, sometimes we want that reflection, and absolutely there can be deferrals. But that's one of the examples of we've had different meetings where we brought items in because of a sense of urgency, and we kind of deviated from our procedural bylaw to get them in as items of discussion because we really want to award the tenders quicker. That's just one example of where having that council meeting every 2 weeks provides that opportunity. As a counterpoint to.
And just before I go to council, Robinson and council, but if we don't have committee of the whole and we pass a motion that night, that motion comes into effect the next, there's no deferred time. Especially even if we make a mistake, council Robinson, council Roman.
Some of the report, there is an option 2B, which is to establish a modified committee of the whole structure. Because it sounds like there are some items, if we can define them, that could warrant committee of the whole, but there's also items, as Ms. Brooks has indicated, that where committee of the whole is causing a hiccup in efficiencies and processes, and that's not good either. Is there a way that we can define what items should go into a committee of the whole and then get around, like, have that cooling off period? So that maybe things that we understand to be contentious, or like, I don't know, like, is there a way to define this?
Maybe what Ms. Brock said, RFPs and that do not put the committee of the whole, no right to council. But, council Roman and then council Ms. Brock.
Motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was just for the benefit of the two rookie councilors here. When Council Ross and I first got into council 10 years ago, that time, every meeting was council, there was no meeting of the whole. And I don't believe it was, right?
There was a daytime meeting that we changed for council originally. Committee of the whole used to be all day. It's a daytime meeting and it changed to nighttime.
Was it committee of the whole time? I just remember the committee of the whole process. I remember as a rookie councilor enjoying it because it allows a chance to reflect and a chance to talk to neighbors and residents about the emotions that are important. I remember, as time goes by, you get more experience, you think, well, let's just speed this up and let's just have council every time. So I see the benefit of having council meetings every meeting. But from the point of view of new councilors, and I know Councilor Tilly especially likes to really think things through, and I like to think about it, chew on it for a few days. So I'm not sure if this structure is going to work for all members of council. That's the reason why I thought, in my estimation, it'd be great, sure, let's do it. But looking at the way we operate as council, I think there are some benefits to the whole, and sort of has some more fun with it.
Ms. Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To address through you, Councilor Holmes' comment about it modified, obviously staff can look at a whole bunch of different formats as chosen. But I just want to harken back to what the community said at the beginning, where although it's a consent agenda, if items are deemed to need that further discussion or that more review, they would be placed into that items for discussion line. And then council could always choose to defer those items to the next meeting if they wanted further information or further time to reflect on. that is always an option of council, is to defer motions. So having the meeting every 2 weeks doesn't preclude you from doing that.
Councillor Tilly.
Just like, I guess, a little bit more feedback on the hybrid situation where the adjustment like discussions or like where we could actually have that opportunity to expedite decisions, have something maybe like a bid tender award, or where it's something where we do need to hand it. Is there such a hybrid that maybe CEO has already in mind?
So, Madam Mayor, if you take a look at tonight's agenda, you are ratifying what's in the committee of the whole agenda tonight. Now, that was because the window for participation in the review of Bill 162 actually needed a decision of Township Council. And so I couldn't wait until the end of the month because you would have been outside the commenting window as published by the province of Ontario. So I went to the clerk and said, you know, PD report 08, once committee has dealt with it, whatever position committee took, I need that ratified by council tonight so that I can post into the province's ERO digital portal. So the clerk came back to me and said, well, Andrew, the other reports are fairly straightforward. It's difficult to track all of our reports and do the minutes if we start pulling things apart, where we're only approving perhaps 1 or 2 items, and the rest are carried forward as recommendations to be ratified at the next council meeting. And would you have any objections if I just showed all of tonight's committee reports to be presented to council for ratification? So there is a modification. It's allowed for under our procedural bylaw as long as it's published as part of the agenda top sheet. And so tonight, you're sitting both as committee of adjustment, where you have the opportunity in one of the 4 functional areas to sit as committee and debate like you are right now. At some point, we'll close out this section. There'll be a recommendation from committee to council. And literally, as you reconvene back to council, you will be ratifying your actions from earlier tonight. The only difference between what we're recommending and what our past practice has been, what's unfolding tonight is you will have a couple less motions because you won't need to go into committee of the whole or adjourn from committee of the whole. You're sitting as council. So council, you can still pull in those reports, you still have those discussions, but you're ratifying them later in the same meeting.
And CEO McNeil's right, we've done that several times in the last year. We have several times gone to the committee of the whole, right in the council, and passed what we had in the committee of the whole. Is it a moot point? Is it a point where, even if we got rid of committee or just committee of the whole, that at any time we can pull back the motion and we can reopen the thing. CEO McNeil.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm going to toss this out to members of council for your consideration. If your concern is that the public doesn't have enough time to access material, and I'll say digest what's on an agenda, or maybe we publish the agenda a little bit earlier in the week. So right now, for tonight's meeting, as an example, members of council got their agenda on the Wednesday afternoon. Members of public on the website, it was posted and available Thursday afternoon. Any member of the public could even appear right up to the start of tonight's meeting and appeared and said, I wish, with Madam Mayor for the meeting, saying I wish to report, I want to speak to report 9B as an example. And they would have been given the opportunity. They could have corresponded with the clerk and that would have been recirculated to you. It would have been part of your decision-making evaluation of that report or a series of reports that evening. But if we backed up and perhaps published the agenda available to the public on the Wednesday or the Tuesday, does that give the public more opportunity in terms of days, hours, to see what's on the agenda. If there's something of interest, they have always have the ability to either connect virtually, write into the clerk, have their correspondence form part of the public record, call a member of council, and or appear at a council meeting. With an extra 24, 48 hours of public access to the published agenda, make a difference and perhaps remove your concern about abandoning that 2-week pause between committee making recommendation to regular council for ratification. Knowing that at any point in time, after a decision is made, to what Madam Mayor indicated earlier, council could pull back a report, mover and seconder, 2/3 of council agreeable to revisit, and then it's discussed again. Now, in my time here, think of all the reports, think of all the meetings that have been convened, probably can count them on one hand. It's not what I'm getting at, it's not a frequent action or activity. It has occurred. The procedural bylaw allows that opportunity. The procedural bylaw will allow that ability again, albeit you're now dealing with motion for reconsideration rather than, where a decision has been made, rather than that sober second thought in that 2-week period.
Councillor Nelson.
I'm not so sure the biggest effective way would be to get the agenda out to the public earlier. Because what happens a lot of times is we have a meeting and one person, the next day is talking to the next person, and that's when it gets out. It gets out, a lot of people unfortunately are not proactive when it comes to the reports and stuff, they're reactive. So I think that using the ice service as an example, what happened there? Like it was kind of like, okay, well, we've got to make sure we have 2 ice services, so let's take this as an option right now. And then it's like, what? You're not doing that. And then it comes after, whereas there wasn't a lot of feedback prior to that. Excuse me. So I'm just worried about if you get the agenda out earlier and say, okay, we have it out to the public earlier, it may not register until people who follow council or read it in the paper or see it in YouTube 2 days later, go, what did they do? So, but I like the idea of this because there are a lot of reports that simply do not need to sit on the burner for 2 weeks. And I think that if we get to something that's really contentious, I think that's when we turn around and say, you know what? I think we need more information on this, and I'd like to bring it back to council in 2 weeks. And then we have our 2 weeks. If any members of the public don't have an issue with whatever it is, then I guess 2 weeks later. But for the majority, I think it would really help staff if we could get the majority of the motion stuff, like get them done. They don't need to sit.
And I don't disagree with you, Councillor Oshie, and I have to be honest here. The things that have come back to us have been things that have been written about in the news. I have to truthfully be honest. And making our staff bring it out a day or 2 earlier isn't going to make any difference. But when they read it in the news, what's happening, that's when we seem to get contacted. And you're right, we can't bring it back anytime. So if we can bring it back anytime, and do we really need community more?
So I do want to caution, there is a procedure to reactivate and revisit an earlier council decision. It requires 2/3 of council.
That's right.
So I just want to,
But we mentioned that several times.
Fair enough, I just wanna
To
make-
council, yeah, has to open it. And the mover and the seconder have to be the ones that bring it forward, correct?
no, it doesn't need to be the original mover and second. The motion to discuss it requires a mover and a seconder, but it requires 2/3 of council to actually carry it.
Councillor Austin.
Just to be clear, I'm hoping to avoid that by saying at a meeting, like, the report comes to us tonight. And any one counselor says, you know what, I'm not really comfortable with that, I don't know enough about that. I'd like to see some, or hear what the public has to say about it before we vote to accept it. And then have to reverse it. Like, I want to avoid that situation because honestly, I feel a little bit embarrassed when that situation happens. So I think that this way we can say, if any counselor says, you know what, I'd like to hear what my constituents think about this because I think this really affects people in Ward 3, or whatever ward. Then that can be bumped out 2 weeks. To the next meeting, and then if you come back and say, you know what, I talked to a lot of people, they're just fine with it, let's go ahead. Or, no, that's when the discussion comes in, but I think that if there's any red flag for anybody on something, I think as a team, we should, if it's legitimate, I think we should look at it as a team and say, you know what, okay, if you're not comfortable with this, let's just take it easy, and 2 weeks, come back. You're good with it? Great.
Councillor Taylor.
I really appreciate, Councilor Roman, when you reminded me of how I like to process. And one of the things that I definitely do is that I learn as I go. And one of the things I wish that I learned was the deferment of the decision on the ACC back months ago, when we made the decision to go with the first plan. And I think that had to do with me being a people pleaser, but also because I had some experience. And so what I can definitely say is what I know now, I think I would have answered completely different. I would have said I would like to deferment and do that. But doesn't mean we'll do it every time, but I think that was one of the situations where I wish I had done that. I can't recall when Councilor Austin requested to go back and change something, but I'm pretty sure that did happen. If this is gonna help 95% of our time to be more effective and help keep staff moving on in the process, I'm open to getting the council of whole, committee whole to not be a regular part of our schedule. But at the same time, I do like the opportunity to leave that. And if you read in the actual report, the committee of whole structure is used in many jurisdictions. It is seen as a benefit to promote consideration of full debate on issues. That is exactly what Councilor Roman said. We sometimes do need that. Going back, if it's an important issue, we'll go back and readjust. We'll sit back. We did that for the started a committee for the cycle of the contract. We did go back and do that. So I think we can make it work either way, but if it helps us for the majority of the time, then I'm okay. And I think I am one of the people that would be most resistant to removing that. So I'm just putting that up there.
If I may, Councillor Tilly, capital forecast is not the same as a bylaw that would pass or a motion that would pass. So being one way or another on capital forecast is really irrelevant because it's a voting document. A decision we can talk about today at capital forecast, we can change on Thursday based on the situations of the day. And Councillor Austin, the ones that you brought back after committee of the whole and reversed the vote, there was no discussion or debate the other way. You brought new information back 2 weeks later that changed that vote. So you're not going to ever avoid that, I think. I'm not going one way or the other. I just want to give wholesome. See,
Madam Mayor, if council's generally comfortable with the direction of the staff report and the recommendations put forward by Mr. Kruger, then I'd suggest item number 3 as a new part of the recommendation. And basically, that in March of 2025, so 1 calendar year from now, we reconsider, did these changes, are they working for members of council? Do you feel that you're getting the oversight that you need in terms of decision making as an assisted public participation or engagement? And is it working as you hope to achieve in terms of efficiently utilizing council's time when you're in the chambers?
Council's, I'm quite comfortable with that. Is everybody comfortable with that? Councilor Austin?
As long as it doesn't limit us to not making any alterations before March 2025. If something is glaringly wrong with our systems, we want to be able to change it, correct the issue as soon as possible.
So Madam Mayor, through Councilor Austin. Yes, if the wheels start coming off or we spring some flat tires, yes, we would need to adjust it, because I don't think anyone wants to go through the frustration of a year of something that's not working. Where I was trying to use the 1 year window, you would see both, I'll call them regular meetings, the combined meetings, the public council planning meetings. You would have some experience with it in the different seasons. Obviously ebbs and flows as it relates to workloads, because there are some spikes through the calendar year, similar to the 1 year we just had. Once the new council came in, we just gave everyone a chance to test it. Does it work? What's working? What isn't working? You would have the same litmus test a year from now. But to your point, if it's not working, or it's not achieving the desired result, there's nothing to stop council anytime between now and then to say, we need to pump the brakes. We need to focus on whatever the lights may be. Staff bring back a report on how that can be achieved. I'm just using the 1 year as there will be a return report at a minimum 1 year from now.
And I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Okay, now I'm going to state that if we have a 7 o'clock start time, and the reason I'm thinking is not everybody gets home before work and can rush in here by 6 o'clock, especially when the meeting's important. And I think 7 o'clock gives people time to get in. On the other hand, 7 can be a little too late, because some people have children to bed. So I like a discussion where we think 6 or 7, or it's all about 6:30. Council, what do you think? So awesome.
I'm okay with 6. Like I said, I work till 5, so I sneak out 15 minutes early and get time to eat quickly and so it requires a little bit more effort, but that's fine, because I think it's better to start earlier than later. I think.
Council Wells.
So I do struggle sometimes with the 6 o'clock, but yeah, my kids come home at 4:45, and so it's like a bit of a zoo. But at the same time, you can make work. I'm willing to make whatever work, but my key thought is, if it's much better for the public that we meet later, then I'm willing for that. But for I'll make anything.
Council Tilly.
Just on the basis of what was just mentioned about previously, there used to be a committee with a poll done through the day. And as far as I understand, regional council done through the day as well. It's not done with them. That is not unreasonable to say that there's not going to be overtime for anybody, but we've done our best by putting it. If it does work for us as council to meet at this time, and it keeps, doesn't keep staff here later than they need to be because they're already here for the whole day and they're supporting us at this role, I think it does make sense to move it to 6 o'clock only for those multiple reasons. There are other reasons why to move it later, but I think those are primarily the reasons why it's important.
Council Woman.
I guess, just to be devil's advocate, is there any advantage in having an earlier start? Should we look at having one meeting a month at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock? That for people on staff now, the staff are very late. That's the thing. I know some councils do that. They have one meeting in the evening, one meeting in the day, or one meeting late afternoon. So just throwing it out there, just to be devil's advocate.
Actually, the only reason we went to the evening meeting is to put the money on hold during the day was because Councillor Ritchie was teaching and when I did it as a counselor, all my vacation days were spent at community hall. So I have to take a holiday every time I was at community hall. My apologies, Councillor Austin.
Yeah, if you have meetings at 3 o'clock, that'll be the one meeting a month that I will miss, because, you know, as a counselor, we know that it's a full-time job, so I need a full-time job. You know, if they want to pay me a full-time job, then you can have meetings anytime you want. We'll meet at 9, we'll meet all day if you want, but I'm just saying that, like, when you have a job, I'm sure that most people will respect the fact that you need to honor your job and you honor your commitment. This way we can move on. Like, I would not want to miss one meeting a month simply because I can't take any more time.
See you on the bill.
So, Madam Mayor, my staff recommended continuation of evening meetings on a consistent basis. Was largely in recognition that for the most part, most of our residents generally work a 9 to 5 job. I do acknowledge we do have people that do shift work and have straight evenings, but as a percentage, most of our residents do work a traditional business day. You have to remember, one of the good things that came out of the pandemic was the ability to have digital meetings where a resident at their place of work, in their car, and or in their residence have the ability to connect remote. And so, you know, that opportunity is not being lost. And so if they have a matter in front of them and they're not able to attend in person, or they choose not to submit something in an email or correspondence to the clerk in advance of the meeting, you do have the ability to connect remote. And for the most part, technology has been agreeable, and they've been able to have a meaningful participation, albeit not in the council chambers. We certainly did not have that luxury pre-pandemic. And so this is, you know, where we're leveraging technology, and it's allowing us to have a deeper penetration into the public and being able to accommodate a broader spectrum of our population. The other is all of our meetings are on YouTube. They're posted on the website a day or two later. And to Councillor Bosner's point, they're either watching it live through the YouTube channel, or they're going back 2 days, 3 days later at their convenience. They're hitting the items that they wish to, and then they may be calling you up. And that may trigger further discussion at the next council meeting. Where I'm going is we're leveraging the digital environment. It is still relatively new to us, but it's something that didn't exist 5 years ago. And it just broadens the ability for the public to participate. In terms of the 6 o'clock versus the 7 o'clock, it's a long day for everybody. Public, members of council, and staff. And you also have done your 8-hour job to come here. So it's just not staff that's had a long day, it's members of council and the public themselves. The one advantage of starting at 6 o'clock is we're not wrapping up at 11 o'clock at night and then going home and unwind, trying to unwind before the next start of the day. And, you know, if you're done at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, it does allow you to settle down before evening news and turn off the light.
Councillor Austin.
So generally, our staff, our daytime staff works till 5 or 4:30.
So, Madam Mayor, on council days, some members of staff who actually participate at council, some might start their day a little bit later, and work right through to the council meeting, and then there's the council meeting. Others might come in later in the morning, the day after council, recognizing the evening meeting the night before. Others are putting in a full day and then a council meeting. We catalog our time here in front of council. So, you know, for tonight, it was showing at 6 o'clock, and if we're going to 7:30, just to pick the time, on their time sheet would show an hour and a half at council beyond whatever else they worked on March 11th. And at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation under the Employment Standards Act, if that time is banked, we have to pay it out in accordance with the Employment Standards Act.
So that's where I was going with that question. So, that's another issue that may come into hand, that if we continue to leave meetings at 7 o'clock, the staff theoretically finishes work at 5, and they would, come to the council meeting at 7, that's, and then they're hanging around the meetings for another 2 hours, that could potentially be 3-4 hours, 2-4 times a month. We don't want to get into that situation where, due to leaving the meetings later, it's actually costing more on staff bank hours. We gotta be careful with that. So I think that staff, as well as the residents, you'd like to get home at a decent hour, especially if you have children, you want to get home, so your children are going to go to bed, and do some things. So, I mean, I certainly wouldn't be swacking with the fact that I've got to race home versus spot meeting, when there's a lot of people that have bigger issues than that, with families and children, young children and stuff. So I would never, push that.
I was, as I stated, I was thinking from the public, and as CEO, we said most people work till 5, and then they have to drive home, then they have to get into their house. And odds are they're not gonna have something very late at 6 o'clock. And some of them want to be here and want to state their voice, so that was my bid. Staff are done at 4:30, so they're already waiting from between 4:30 and 6 o'clock for a meeting. If we wanted to accommodate staff, we probably have a meeting at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So, this was at my regards to the public and the public alone. Any other comments? Seeing none? So we are probably, from what I hear, 6 o'clock start time. And, we're adding the addendum, into the motion, which Salem we recommended. We hear in March of 2025, unless, it is deemed to speak of the issue earlier. Have you got it, Christina? Okay, thank you. And then there's the details of what to look at. Councilwoman, please.
And by myself, second by Council Williams, that, committee of the whole recommend the following item be approved as then outlined in staff reports. This is the Dartmouth Special Service Function Area 9.2 CLK 07-2024 Council Meeting Structure Procedure Review. The CLK report number 07-2024 be received. The staff be authorized to draft the necessary bylaw for council consideration to implement following amendments to the current council meeting structure and proceedings. Removal of committee of the whole to the inclusion of bi-weekly council meetings. Inclusion of a consent agenda with council meetings to include all reports, correspondence, and minutes that are for information only or are deemed by staff to be of routine nature. Alter council planning meeting agendas to delineate statutory meetings, including a committee adjustment meeting process. Provide for start time of 6 p.m. for council and council planning public meetings, and provide for minor alteration to the agenda format to remove other business, combine bylaw sections, further address electronic participation in the meeting, remove agenda sections following meeting adjournment, and update items regarding speakers reflect current practices. And 3, that staff return to council in March 2025 with a report to review the effectiveness and efficiency of the changes made to the procedural bylaw.
See, only there was one question I forgot to ask, I'm sorry. Did you say that, public can come and speak at any item at any time at any meeting?
So, Madam Mayor, the public will be able to speak to items of the consent agenda and or items for discussion.
Thank you, CEO. That's fine. All those in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. the whole City's Council, please, Councilor Austin.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Kilday, that committee of the whole be hereby adjourned and the council meeting be called back to order.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Adoption of the, committee of the whole resolutions, Council Tilly, please.
Moved by myself, second by Council Oxner, that council adopt the resolutions as presented by the committee of the whole dated March 11, 2024, respecting the following items. By this function, in report 2024 community grant program allocation of funds. Development services function area 7.1 PD report 08/2024, discussion paper bill 162 based on Act 2024. Governance and protected services function area CLK report 06/2024, 2023 annual accessibility status report, CLK report 07/2024, council meeting structure procedures review, FD report 03/2024, February 24th, fire, monthly fire incident summary.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Council votes by all, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Rowland, that bylaw number 3467-24, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held on March 11, 2024, read a first, second, third time, and be finally passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and clerk.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Council Rowland, please.
Myself and Council Williams, that whereas business for this council has been convened at 7:11 PM and be resolved as meeting.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you.